Chapter 40. He loses everything. There is a specific kind of silence that precedes a total collapse. It's not the absence of noise, it's the presence of pressure. It's the feeling of the atmosphere thickening just before a building implodes. I stood in the center of my private study in the penthouse, the early morning light of Manhattan filtering through the glass in dusty, gray streaks. On my desk sat a single red file delivered by a courier who hadn't waited for a signature. The Icarus Protocol. I had spent the last 6 hours reading and rereading the documents Sarah Jenkins had warned me about. My father hadn't just stolen the mapping algorithm from Arthur Sterling. He had sold the potential of that science to a black-budget military conglomerate in Tokyo 30 years ago. He had taken Sterling's dream of healing and turned it into a weaponized blueprint for cognitive control. The treaty Arthur Blackwood had signed in 1996 wasn't a business merger. It was a non-disclosure agreement with a foreign power. And because Maya had used that same tainted architecture to build the Horizon Project, she was technically in violation of international espionage laws. The fourth factor, bridge she had built wasn't just a cure. In the wrong hands, it was a skeleton key for the human mind. And the Tokyo firm, Seido Global, wasn't coming for the money. They were coming for the architect. "Sir." Marcus's voice came over the intercom, sounding more brittle than I had ever heard it. "The federal agents are in the lobby. They aren't New York PD. They're Treasury and State Department. They have a warrant for the seizure of all Sterling Blackwood servers." I closed the file, my heart turning into a cold, heavy stone in my chest. "And Maya?" I asked. "She's in the lab on the 91st floor. She doesn't know they're here yet." I looked at the Vigil of Justice notebook. I had promised to be the wall between her and the dark, but the dark was already inside the building. If the agents reached her now, while she was the CEO, she would be the one handcuffed. She would be the one blamed for launching weaponized tech. I had to lose everything to make sure she kept her soul. "Marcus," I said, my voice vibrating with a lethal, sacrificial clarity. "Deploy the Sovereign Protocol. Wipe my personal server, but leave the trail that points to me as the sole decision-maker for the Tokyo negotiations. Everything, the 1996 signatures, the 2024 launch, it all has to look like it was my initiative. Maya was just the employee I used to execute it." "Sir, you'll be charged with treason," Marcus whispered. "I've lived my whole life as a villain, Marcus. I'm just finally playing the role I was born for." Maya POV. The lab was humming with the beautiful, rhythmic sound of success. "The global sync is at 99%, Maya." Dr. Vogel shouted over the link from Zurich. "The data is pouring in. We're seeing neural regeneration in patients from London to Singapore. It's a miracle." I leaned against the console, tears of joy blurring my vision. "We did it, Vogel. We actually did it." I looked at the ring on my finger. I couldn't wait to tell Alexander. I wanted to see that slow, proud smile. I wanted to tell him that the fallout was finally over and the claim was ours. The lab doors hissed open. I turned, expecting Alexander with champagne, but he wasn't smiling. He was wearing his black three-piece suit, the one that made him look like a predatory god. His face was a mask of cold, terrifying indifference. He looked exactly like the man I had met at the gala. "Alexander, what is it? We're live. The project is a success." He didn't come to me. He stayed by the door, his hands behind his back. "The project is a liability, Maya," he said, his voice a flat, clinical monotone. "And you are no longer the CEO of this company." I froze, the joy in the room evaporated, replaced by a sudden, stabbing fear. What are you talking about? You signed the papers. You gave me the controlling interest. I signed a draft, he lied, his eyes as gray and hard as the Atlantic. A draft I had my legal team invalidate an hour ago. I needed you to finish the code, Maya. I needed you to solve the fourth factor so the Icarus protocol could be finalized. You were a very efficient tool, but the rise is over. I felt the air leave my lungs as if he had punched me. The Icarus protocol, what are you saying? Alexander, look at me. I stepped toward him, but he didn't flinch. He didn't show a flicker of the man who had knelt by my father's bed. Sato Global is my primary partner, he continued, his voice devoid of any emotion. They've been funding my family for 30 years. Your father's work was always meant for them. I just used you to polish the final product. You're lying, I whispered, the tears finally falling. You loved me. You took me to the Hamptons. You gave me this ring. He looked down at my hand as if the diamond were a piece of trash. The ring was a calculated move to ensure your cooperation during the Zurich summit. You were becoming difficult to manage. A romantic distraction was the most logical way to secure your focus on the Factor 4 bridge. No, Alexander, stop this. I lunged for him, grabbing his lapels, shaking him. I know who you are. I saw you in the rain. I saw you cry. He grabbed my wrists, his grip hard and unforgiving, just like it had been on the first night in the penthouse. He leaned down, his breath cold against my ear. You saw what I wanted you to see, Maya. I'm a Blackwood. I own the room. And right now, I'm cleaning it. The lab doors burst open again. This time, it was the federal agents. Alexander Blackwood. The lead agent shouted, his weapon drawn. You're under arrest for violation of the International Espionage Act and the illegal weaponization of cognitive data. Alexander let go of my wrists and turned toward them, his head held high. He didn't look at me. He didn't say goodbye. I believe you'll find all the necessary documentation on my private terminal, Alexander said, his voice echoing through the silent lab. Miss Sterling was merely a technical consultant under my duress. She has no knowledge of the Sato contracts. I watched, paralyzed by a mixture of horror and disbelief, as they forced him to his knees. They pulled his arms behind his back and clicked the handcuffs into place. The man who had owned the room was being dragged out of it. Alexander. I screamed, finding my voice. Alexander, tell them the truth. He stopped at the door. He turned his head just enough to look at me one last time. For a split second, the mask slipped. I saw the raw, agonizing love in his eyes, the silent I'm sorry that he couldn't say. Then he was gone. Alexander POV. The ride in the back of the federal SUV was the first time I had felt truly free in 34 years. I listened to the sirens, the sound of my empire collapsing behind me. I had lost the company. I had lost my reputation. I had lost my fortune. And in 10 minutes, I would be the most hated man in the world. But Maya was safe. By claiming the Icarus protocol as my own, I had immunized her. The victim narrative would hold. She would keep the patents. She would keep the science. She would keep the room. The only thing I had truly lost was her. And as I looked at my reflection in the tinted window, a disgraced billionaire in handcuffs, I realized that I had finally won the only deal that mattered. I had saved the woman I loved from the fire of my own blood. Maya POV. The penthouse was silent. The federal agents had cleared out an hour ago, taking the servers and the files. They had left me alone because of Alexander's confession. I was the innocent scientist. I was the victim of the Blackwood pattern. I sat on the floor of the living room, staring at the Vigil of Justice statue. The scales were tipped entirely to one side. I looked at the phone Marcus had slipped into my hand before he followed the lawyers. He didn't mean it, Maya. Look at the 13th page of the notebook. I crawled to the desk and grabbed the notebook. I turned to the page Alexander had been writing on last night. It wasn't a corporate strategy. It wasn't a confession, it was a letter. Maya. If you're reading this, it means I've finally lost the room. It means the ghosts of my father have caught up to me, and I've had to choose between my life and yours. Don't believe the words I said in the lab. I'm a better liar than you, but I'm a terrible actor. Every kiss was real. Every promise was a vow. I love you more than I ever loved the power. I'm taking the fall for the Icarus Protocol because I won't let your father's legacy be turned into a crime. You own the room now, Maya. Truly. Don't look back for me. Don't try to save me. Just keep the lights on. Keep the science pure. You were never locked in, Maya. I was. And you were the only one who ever gave me the key. Forever, eh? I clutched the notebook to my chest, a primal, racking sob finally breaking through. He had lied to me to save me. He had destroyed himself to ensure I could rise. He hadn't chosen control over me. He had chosen me over everything. I stood up, the fire of Act II returning to my veins, but this time it was tempered by the cold, hard logic of the woman who now owned the world. Alexander thought he had lost everything. He thought he was the sacrifice. He forgot one thing. I was the CEO of the Sterling Blackwood Group. I had the code, I had the truth, and I had the man who would do anything for me. Marcus! I shouted into the intercom. Yes, Maya. Call the Tokyo office. And tell the State Department they have 1 hour to release Alexander Blackwood, or I'm releasing the source code of the Icarus Protocol to the entire planet. If they want to play war, let's see how they handle a world where no one can keep a secret. Alexander POV, the holding cell. The cell was 6 by 8, cold stone, a metal bench, and a single light bulb. I sat there staring at the wall. I felt a strange sense of completion. I had nothing left to protect, no risks to hedge. I was just Alexander. The heavy steel door groaned open. I expected the lawyer or the prosecutor, but it was Maya. She wasn't wearing the ivory suit. She was wearing her old lab coat, her hair messy, her eyes burning with that familiar, beautiful defiance. She walked into the cell and stood in front of me, her hands on her hips. "You're a terrible liar, Alexander," she said, her voice a low, vibrating growl of love. I looked up at her, my heart skipping a beat. "Maya, you shouldn't be here, the optics." "To hell with the optics," she shouted, pulling me to my feet. She grabbed my face in her hands, her thumbs tracing the lines of my exhaustion. "You thought you could just leave me. You thought you could be the martyr while I sat in your penthouse and cried. I was protecting you, Maya. Sato Global is currently being investigated by the UN for human rights violations," she interrupted. "I leaked the Icarus files, Alexander, all of them. The weaponization, the treaties, the Blackwood involvement. The whole world knows the truth now. And because I'm the one who exposed it, I'm the whistleblower, not the conspirator." I stared at her, my mouth open. You destroyed the leverage." "I destroyed the cage, Alexander." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the charred platinum ring. She took my hand and pressed it into my palm. "The room is ours. The science is pure, and your mother is never coming back." She leaned in, her forehead resting against mine. "You lost everything today, Alexander. Your company, your name, your secrets." "I know," I whispered, the tears finally breaking through. "Good," she breathed, her mouth finding mine in a kiss that tasted of victory and the end of a lifetime of wars. Because now, you finally have enough space for me. The fallout was over. The claim was beginning. And as the guards opened the doors to the hallway, letting the light of the afternoon sun flood the cell, I realized that I hadn't lost anything at all. I had finally found the only thing worth keeping. Maya POV, end of chapter 40. We walked out of the federal building together. The press was there, a wall of cameras that stretched for 3 blocks. The world was shouting, screaming, baying for a story. Alexander didn't look at them. He kept his arm wrapped around my waist, his head bowed to mine. "What now, CEO Sterling?" He whispered. "Now," I said, looking at the cameras with a slow, lethal smile. "We go to the Hamptons. We have a Tuesday night pizza to catch up on. And the company." "The company can wait," I said, leading him to the car. "I'm the boss, remember, and I say the room is closed for the weekend." We stepped into the back of the SUV. The doors closed, sealing out the noise of the world. The fallout was finished. Act III was complete. Act IV was the claim. And as I looked at Alexander, his hand in mine, I realized that we weren't just survivors. We were the ones who owned the fire. And the world was never going to be the same. Next chapter, chapter 41, The Apology.